Aloha and welcome to the G'day Sally show. Tonight I'm going to be reading a story from my book Pockets, The Coat of Hidden Treasure. And this story is called Dolphin Island. Splash! Suddenly the cold water hit me and I realized I had fallen off the back of the ship. I hadn't meant to lean out quite so far, but once I had lost my balance, then I knew I was in for a ducking. This wasn't just a small pond or a stream or even a river. This was the ocean I had fallen into. And in the dark, no one on board seemed to see me in the water. I floated as I watched the ship disappear into the distance. Surely my mother or my grandmother would realize that I was missing after a short time. But then I thought, their cabins are at the opposite ends of the ship, so each one might think that I'm with the other and not report my disappearance until breakfast the next morning when they can't find me. It was so dark I couldn't see more than a short distance around me. There wasn't even much moonlight, as what moon was visible was hidden by clouds. Suddenly I felt a fish, or some creature, slide past me and brush against my leg. I hope it isn't hungry, I thought as I trod water, determined not to panic. Then I saw a grey shape gliding towards me, and I started to worry that it might be a shark. But as it got closer, I could see to my surprise and delight that my visitor was a dolphin, a grey bottle-nosed dolphin. Ah, I thought, I have read about dolphins saving people in oceans before, so maybe this dolphin will save me. It glided up very close to me and sort of nudged me with its bottle-shaped nose. I thought it must want me to grab hold of its fin, so that is exactly what I did. And it made a funny kind of noise, as if to say, yes, that's the idea, now hang on. Well, I hung on as tightly as I could, because that dolphin took off fast like a train. I was getting strong waves washing over me as that dolphin swam to, well, I didn't know where it was taking me. I hadn't seen any other ships in the area as we sailed, nor had I noticed any islands or land anywhere. I knew our next port of call was not for some days, so I was puzzled about where the dolphin would take me. I hoped it wasn't going to keep swimming for days and days, expecting me to be strong enough to keep holding on. It must have been several hours that we'd been swimming. Well, I had been holding on while my dolphin friend was swimming, when I felt sand beneath my feet, and I realized that the dolphin had taken me to a landmass of some sort. By the time we got there, it was beginning to get light, and I could see a beach and palm trees. Hooray! I wasn't going to slip between the waves and never be seen again. I had been saved, and by a dolphin of all things. As we got into the shallows, the dolphin sort of turned its head and gently nudged me with its nose, so I knew it was telling me that my ride was over, and that from now on I could fend for myself. It gave a sort of chuckly laugh as it turned and swam away. I called out, "Thank you, dolphin, for rescuing me," but it might not have heard me, as it did not turn, but just kept swimming, and then it leapt right out of the water, so high I could see its whole body. What a fantastic sight! I waded out of the shallows onto the beach, wondering where I was and whether there were any people there, but I was so exhausted that I sat down under a palm tree and fell asleep. The sun was hot when I woke up, and I thought I should try and work out what I should do about food and water for myself. There was still no one on the beach. And then I remembered that in my pocket I had my magnet and my compass. I hoped they were still there and had not dropped out when I fell into the ocean. Digging down into my pocket, I could feel that, yes, they were still with me. Well, at least I would be able to work out my directions. I turned away from the beach after washing my face and soaking my poor, hot feet for a few minutes and started my first explore on my very own island. Because I was starting to think of it as my very own island. I thought I should try to find a high spot on the island and climb a palm tree to see what my surroundings were. But first I knew I should concentrate on trying to find water, as I was very thirsty. It seemed like many hours that I had been walking through the palm trees and the undergrowth, but eventually I could hear what sounded like a trickle of water. Hooray! I shouted out loud, and I checked my compass to note the direction of this water source, if that's what it was, so that I would be able to find it again. It wasn't a big stream as such, but it was a pool of water, so I figured it must be fed by an underground spring. I rushed to the side and started to drink. The water was cool and a little sweet. I stopped myself because I knew I mustn't drink too much all at once, but take in water a little at a time. Eventually I stopped feeling thirsty, so I sat down under one of the palm trees and looked up. I could see what looked like big brown nuts at the top of the tree. I wonder if these are coconut palms, I thought. I had always loved climbing trees as I was growing up, though my mother and grandmother always scolded me, telling me that young ladies do not climb trees. But I loved the feeling of freedom I always felt when I was high up in the branches of a tree. So if I could climb trees, then I was going to have a darn good go at climbing a coconut palm. It was harder because there were no real branches to hang on to. But I found that if I squeezed my knees together, I could manage, though painfully slowly, to climb the trunk. When I got to where the coconuts were, I hung on with one hand and hit the coconuts with my other hand to loosen them. Finally, several dropped to the ground. I slid down carefully to gather up my coconut bounty. Smashing one of the coconuts on a jagged rock, my hands were covered in cool liquid. It tasted wonderful as I drank from my first coconut. I found a longish, sharp piece of rock and scraped out the meat inside. It was delicious. Now I also had a bowl to carry water in, using the coconut shells. So I could carry water with me while I explored further and tried to find a good place to build up firewood, so I would be able to light a fire as a signal if I saw a passing ship or even a small boat. Building a signal fire is always one of the first things people do if they're marooned on an island, so I figured I should do it too. After all, it makes sense. Otherwise, a ship could sail by and never see me. I had noticed that there seemed to be some kind of insects when I was walking through the jungle, so I rubbed some of the coconut juice on my arms and legs, hoping that might stop them from biting me. I kept checking my compass to remember the direction I was walking away from the pool. I wanted to make sure that I would be able to find it from wherever I was on the island. I kept thinking about that dolphin who had rescued me while I was walking, so I decided to call my island Dolphin Island. I could feel that the ground was on an incline, so I figured I was walking the right way to reach a high point on the island. And finally, as I left the palm trees behind and reached an open area, I could see that I was actually on a ridge that was higher than the surrounding area. It looked like a good place to build a fire, so I set about getting dry branches and leaves to build it. While I was scouting around for fallen leaves, I found a piece of metal, and I thought I could see if I could concentrate the sun's rays by using my magnet and the metal to light some dry leaves. It took a few minutes, but it eventually worked. I went back to that spot to see if I could find a bigger piece of metal. I dug down with a sharp stick as my hands were getting sore, and much to my surprise, I found a round piece of metal. I washed off the dirt from it, and amazingly I could see that it was a coin, but no coin that I had ever seen before. And it had the image of an 8 and what looked like a wave on one side and a sort of cross on the other side. It was silver, but was very dirty, and most of the image had worn off. I've always been fascinated by pirates, and I got quite excited about my find. Maybe this was the treasure buried by pirates long ago. It was starting to get dark, so I thought I would stay near here, so if I heard a ship come in the night, I would be able to light my fire quickly to signal it. And while there was still some light, I thought I might as well dig some more and see if I could find any more buried treasure. I found 6 more coins, and then it was too dark to see any further. I lay down under some overhanging leaves from one of the giant plants on the island and went to sleep watching the stars overhead. The next morning I decided to climb one of the palm trees to see if I could see anyone else on the island or even any buildings, but there was nothing. It looked like Dolphin Island was really my very own island, and while I was up there I got more coconuts. Each morning I would feel full of hope that this would be the day of my rescue, but several days went by and with no sign of any rescuers. I had found another 8 coins, but then there seemed to be no more. so I decided to go back to the beach, stopping off at my pool on the way to collect more water. As I arrived back at the beach, I was so happy to see what looked like my dolphin rescuer a little way out in the water. When the dolphin saw me, it took a huge leap out of the water as if to say hello. I was so excited to see it, I ran into the waves and swam out to it. And then it gave me another wonderful surprise. It herded a fish right into my hands, so I had my dinner for that night. I took the fish back up to the shore and then went back to swim with my dolphin friend while it was still there. I decided to call my dolphin Mutabasi, which means rescuer, and when I called it that name, my dolphin nodded its head as if to say, "I like your name for me." After it had swum out into deeper water, I guess to join its family, I decided to build another signal fire on the beach, so that wherever I was on my island, I would not be far from a signal fire in case I saw a ship. I wanted to get it lit before the sun went down so I could use one of the coins in my magnet to start the smoke and then blow it to make flames. And I decided that I should use coconut husks to keep it alight and not let it go out again. So I dragged some fallen palm branches onto the beach and built a big bonfire. I pushed some large pieces of coral rock into the side of the fire and laid my Mutabasi caught fish on it to cook it. It was delicious, a tasty change from coconuts. I had woven a kind of basket sack to keep my coins in, so I found a place just under one of the rocks by the shore to keep them until my rescuers found me. And after that, Mutabasi would come and see me at least once a day, and each time bring me a fish, so I was very well fed. As it was visiting me usually in the afternoon, I would go and collect water from my pool each morning, and then go for a swim and wait for my visitor. I began to think that I would not have minded if I was never rescued. I was enjoying my solitary dolphin island life so much. But I was sure my mother and grandmother were doing everything they could to find out where I was and to effect a more permanent rescue for me. The shipping company were not sure exactly where I had fallen off their ship, but they had sent messages all across the ocean to all ships to notify them that I was missing, and I found out later that my photograph had been sent over thousands of miles of oceans so that I would be recognized at once. Some cruel people told my mother and grandmother that I would have drowned immediately I fell and that they should accept my fate. But my mother and grandmother just would not give up. They knew I could swim, and they consoled themselves by imagining me swimming strongly through the ocean currents to an island, just like the one I was on, my dolphin island. And I had no idea just how far my dolphin had taken me on its back to rescue me. I hadn't seen any sign of life, nor had I seen anyone else on my island, and I began to wonder if it was even on any ocean maps. Perhaps I would never be found. But I didn't think about that much, as I settled into my routine with Mutabasi and the island life I was leading. I began to draw a star map on the sand, and to see how many of the stars and constellations I could remember. At first I could only remember a few, but as the nights wore on, I found that I could remember many more. And then I started to write out my times table on the sand so that I would not be too far behind when I got back to school. Oh yes, I always felt that one day I would be rescued and would be able to go back to school and meet up with all my school friends and tell them about my island adventure. One day Mutabasi brought a friend with him. I'm not sure if it was his sister or his brother, but it looked about the same age as he was. I never did find out if Mutabasi was a girl dolphin or a boy dolphin, and I guess I will never know. I just know that he or she was a wonderful friend to me and saved my life in more ways than one. They both played with me in the water, and then they seemed to be competing with each other to herd a fish towards me, so that day I ended up with 2 fresh fish for my dinner. I don't know what happened to the friend, but I never saw it with Mutabasi again. Then one morning, earlier than Mutabasi usually visited, I could see him quite close into the beach, and he was leaping out of the water and making a real racket to get my attention. I couldn't work out why he was behaving so strangely, and then I knew why. I could see the front of a boat just nosing around the headland. I guess Mutabasi was trying to tell me that a boat was coming and that I should put more branches on my fire so that they would see the smoke. And that is exactly what I did. I soon had a huge blaze burning, and I called out as loudly as I could to the people in the boat. Finally, I could see someone on the deck waving a red and white piece of cloth at me, so I knew I had been seen. Captain Casey was astounded when I told him that I was alone on my Dolphin Island. He kept expecting my parents or some other adults to appear from beneath the palm trees. I don't think he believed me at first when I told him about Mutabazi's rescue of me and how we had become fast friends and he would help me catch fish every day. But when I showed him my pool and took him up to the hilltop where I had built my other fire, he did seem as if he was beginning to believe me. But what really convinced him was when Mutabazi appeared and leapt out of the water just by me and then did his fish herding trick so I could catch another fish. The captain just scratched his head and said, "Well, I have never seen anything like this before." I was so sad to be leaving my Dolphin Island home, and especially to be leaving my rescuer and friend Mutabazi. But as I live right on the coast, although it is some distance from Dolphin Island, I feel sure that one day, when I'm swimming at the beach, I will see a familiar dolphin visitor because Mutabazi will have found me again. You know, Hawaii is a microcosm of the world, with people here from all over the world. And Noa Noa Hawaii is a microcosm of the traditional arts of the world, with beautiful patterns from many countries. They've been in business for more than 40 years with wonderful Hawaii-designed batik clothing. Their hand-dyed and handmade clothes have patterns that are based on traditional kapa and tapa designs from Hawaii, Polynesia, Micronesia, Indonesia, even New Zealand and Africa. So check out the wonderful items that Noa Noa has on their website, www.noanoahawaii.com. So I'll be back next week, so bye for now.